Okay, we'll start with the Mangalacharya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyantimirandasya Vyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam pangam nangyate girim. Yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurudinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining. So last week we had completed our discussion on the 9th chapter, and today we will. So I'll quickly summarize the 9th chapter just for continuity's sake. After that, we can have some time for question and answers, and then the presentations on the Chaturshloki in the 10th chapter. And after that, time permitting, I will summarize the 10th chapter. So that's our plan. So the 9th chapter, as I had mentioned, is one of the key chapters, titled The Most Confidential Knowledge, right in the middle of it. And various reasons it's called the most confidential. That it gives one access to Krishna, direct access to Krishna. It delineates the path of pure devotional service. And Krishna reveals his emotions. He reveals his inner thoughts and feelings. So the chapter began with the Krishna talking about the qualification of one to receive this knowledge, which essentially is non-enviousness. Faith also, but main was non-enviousness. And he tells Arjuna, because you are non-envious, I am telling you. So that's the qualification that entitles us to also read and understand this chapter. And we also discussed that how this non-enviousness, at least in the earlier stages, is manifested primarily as an attraction to Krishna Katha. Krishna Katha is hearing words about Krishna or hearing words that are spoken by Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So then Krishna starts giving this confidential knowledge, first by talking about his relationship to the material world, which Mahaprabhu kind of compiled in this Achintya Bheda Ved Tattva, the inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference, which essentially makes this point that Krishna is different because he acts through his energies. Krishna is the same because the energies are non-different from Krishna. All these changes do not affect Krishna because he is always neutral. And with this, one can understand this tattva in relationship to Krishna's external energy, which is the material universe, and also with respect to his marginal energy, which is the jivas. We then looked at the kinds of people who take to devotion and who do not take to devotion. So Krishna speaks about the mudas, the avajanati ma muda, that The fools, they don't take to devotion because they do not have knowledge, specifically the knowledge about their relationship to Krishna. And he contrasts this with the Mahatmanas Tumam Partha, the souls who are under Devim Prakriti Ashrita, who are under his internal energy. Why? Because Gyatva, because they know who Krishna is. And then Krishna shows what their mood is. Satatam Kirtanantosmam, that they are always chanting. So Krishna speaks about those who surrender because they know, those who do not surrender because they do not know. And then he talks about those in between who surrender but not to Krishna. So he speaks about the Ikatvenas, the Mayavadis. He speaks about the Vishvatomukhams, who worship the universal form, and the Prathakvena, Bahuda, the demigod worshippers. So there is surrender, but Krishna says they surrender wrongly. So he speaks about the universal form worshippers, that how they see Krishna in different aspects of matter. And he speaks about the psychology of the demigod worshippers, that they are worshipping Krishna, but indirectly. And that's why they only get partial material results. And then he speaks about his devotees also, that my devotees only worship me, with the Krishna stresses on the exclusivity part of it. And then in the concluding part of the chapter, Krishna now speaks about the glories of devotional service. So how does one please Krishna? Krishna comes up with a very simple formula, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, you may bhakti prayasya. Whatever you offer with love and devotion. So essentially, that is the secret key to unlock the treasure of Krishna Bhakti, that with love and devotion. And he also says that Karoshi Adasnasi, that if love and devotion is difficult, then Karma Mishra Bhakti. Then whatever you do, then you offer that to me. And then Krishna begins to speak about his affection towards his devotees, that he is neutral towards everybody, but partial towards his devotees. How partial? That even if they commit the most abominable activities, Krishna says they are still to be considered as my devotees because they quickly attain righteousness. Shipati bhavati dharmana shashvat shantam nagachyati. Right? So he says that once my devotee, always my devotee, because they are protected by my internal energy. So this speaks about the glories of bhakti. It protects against past, present, and future sins. And then Krishna ends with the verse which is considered to be the essence of the Gita, Manmanabhav Matakto Matyajimam Namaskaru. And this is a verse that at least the first 2.5 lines are repeated within 1865. And Krishna again, he stresses on exclusivity, right? He uses thinking of me, become my devotee, obeisances to me, worship me, being absorbed in me, surely you will come to me, right? And then we discussed why this me is not Krishna being egoistical or boastful, but because it's factual. In fact, it's a sign of humility from the perspective of Krishna, that only for the benefit of the jivas, he is taking on this position that is not in his nature. Krishna, when Krishna says that I encourage those who take to devotee worship, I give them the faith, then we see Krishna's real humility. He does not get angry or upset at them saying that, how dare you do not worship me, let me condemn you. He helps them also, right? So that is Krishna's real humility. So 3 verses in this chapter speak about pure devotional service. Verse 14, Sadatam Kirtayanto Mam. Verse 22, Ananyas Chintayanto Mam. And verse 26, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. And he will speak more about it in the 12th chapter. And of course, the last verse is the 34th verse is of course completely about pure devotional service. Manmanava Madhbhakti. Okay, so I'll pause over here and see if you have any comments, any observations, any questions. Okay, Gayatri Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. So I wanted to ask you about this Achintya Bheda Bheda. So as far as I understand, Krishna explains here in this chapter that he is simultaneously attached and detached, that he is both in this world and outside of this world. And as far as I understood, this whole conception, Achintya Abheda Bheda, is that Krishna is one, and there is nothing except for Krishna, but simultaneously there are many jivas. Is this correct?
It could be applied. So like I said, the tattva, it's applied to Krishna's external energy, which means Krishna's relationship with the material world. It could also be applied with Krishna's marginal energy, which is the jiva. It is not. So you're saying it is one and many. That's not how the tattva is applied. It's applied in terms of sameness and difference. So when Prabhupada would explain in the context of jivas, so then he would say that Krishna and the jivas are qualitatively the same. Quantitatively, Krishna is infinite and the jivas are infinitesimal. So that's one way to understand the simultaneous oneness and difference.
Okay, so even this, for example, simultaneous and difference on one side, and here Krishna says, I'm attached and detached. So I do not see the connection between the two. How being attached and detached is the same thing as being simultaneously the same and different.
So attached and detached is not a symptom of, so that is not Achinta, right? So in the explanations of Achinta Bheda Bhed, the definition does not expand to Krishna being, at least not that I'm aware of. It does not expand to being simultaneously attached and detached. The detachment per se is used to, so the neutrality of Krishna is used to show his detachment, right? That because Krishna is creating so many things, but he's never attached to it. He's destroying so many things, but he's never troubled by it. Why? Because he is fully neutral. So that neutrality is used to demonstrate Krishna's detachment. But Achinta Bheda Bheda essentially is used to describe the relationship. And if you want to keep it simpler, so let's not talk about the jivas to begin with. Let's talk about Krishna's relationship with the material world. So when we talk about the Bheda Bhed, it is used to demonstrate the fact that the whole material universe is created by Krishna, yet the creation, maintenance, and the destruction of the universe does not have any impact on Krishna. That's what refutes the basis of the impersonalistic theory. So how do we make that statement that Krishna is creating, maintaining, and destroying, but yet he's unaffected? Two things. One, he's acting through his energies. So he's not directly involved. Second, he's always neutral. So he does not get affected by the creation, maintenance, destruction. So if we can grasp that basic concept, that covers most of it. But we have to also be aware that it is achintya. It is inconceivable. So I remember in one of the classes I was giving, so one student said that if this is achintya, then why is Krishna trying to explain it? Because by nature, achintya means that it is inconceivable. And it's a valid question. The answer is that it is indeed inconceivable, but we can conceive it to the extent that Srila Prabhupada has explained to us, the Acharyas have explained to us, and to the extent that we can surrender to the instructions. Otherwise, it will remain various degrees of achintya. It will always remain achintya. But we can get some understanding, which we can borrow from that of the preceding Acharyas.
Thank you. I have one more question. So is Vishvarupa from this chapter, is it the same as Virat Rupa or different?
It's a little different. So this whole, why don't we wait till the 11th chapter? Then we'll talk about it.
Okay, and one last question. So Krishna talks about woman as a separate category. Does it mean that woman does not belong to any of the four ashramas? I mean, he says separately Vaishyas, Shudras, and a woman, as if a woman cannot be one of those.
No, they can be. They can be.
So why does he separate a woman in a separate category?
You have to ask Krishna.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Chaitanya Rasprabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. When we say that even if a devotee commits some abominable activity, he's still to be considered as a devotee. So the two questions there is, when he says devotee, is Krishna talking about pure devotee or a devotee who has submitted to Krishna to some extent? That's first question. And the second question is, in such cases where sorry, it got mute. I don't know how far you were able to hear. So the second question that I had was, in such cases, because I have seen in my own life a couple of devotees, either they got distracted, they were very much into ISKCON, they got initiated, and all of a sudden, I don't know what, for whatever reason, they have totally distracted, they have gone to some other place where they're doing like a demigod worship and all that. So looking at that, what is the course of action for them, or how does Krishna, like, is it like again as if some devotee will give an association out of causeless mercy of the devotees? Like, what is the course of action that happens to that particular devotee? So these are the two questions I had, Prabhu.
So first question that you asked was that they are still to be considered as devotees. Are they pure devotees or mixed devotees? The purpose of that verse is that if you read that verse carefully, it says that because they are continuously occupied in my devotional service, right? So Krishna is talking about those categories of devotees who, while performing bhakti, have fallen, right? So they don't give up on Krishna, they don't reject Krishna, but for various reasons. Because famous example from Bhagavatam is Bharat Maharaj, right? He was performing devotional service, he had a fallen. Right? Krishna says that my devotees never perish. Right?
Perish.
That example is that case. So as long as they're performing devotional service, they are Krishna's devotees. Right? Krishna says they are under my internal energy. If you look at it from a slightly more technical perspective, the reason is that it's explained in Madhuri Kadamini by Vishnu Chakravarti that the performance of bhakti is a spiritual activity and the fall down is a material activity. Like, why do you fall down? Because you go down the modes. You go to mode of ignorance, you fall down. It's material. The modes are material. Right? So Just like the mode of piety cannot guarantee devotion, the mode of ignorance cannot destroy devotion. Now, the mode of piety is conducive to devotion, and the mode of ignorance places obstacles there. But they're difficult. They're different. So the protection of Krishna stays. Now, even if a person gives up bhakti, like you were given the second situation, even if a person gives up bhakti, then that assurance is also there from Krishna, that whatever bhakti that he has done, Krishna preserves it. But bhakti is the right of the devotee. Krishna does not take away that right. And so he will never perform bhakti on your behalf. Because it's the right of the bhakti. So we are, because sadhakas, we look at it as an endeavor, but actually it's a privilege. Krishna had to come as Mahaprabhu to enjoy the privilege. It's a great privilege that the jiva has. That's the only thing that the jiva has, which Krishna does not have. So we say Krishna has everything. He does not have one thing. He does not have the devotion that the jivas have. So Krishna does not steal that away from the jivas, but he will preserve it. So people come, they go, and we see also, I've seen many cases that you meet somebody in the temple, the person is coming for the first time, and then you say that, Prabhu, would you like to join Bhagavad Gita? Would you like to chant? And then within a few months, they're chanting 16 rounds, they're reading the Bhagavad Gita. And there are some people who are coming for years and years and years, and they're still kind of there.
Yeah.
So it's where they're starting from. They did bhakti in previous life, they stopped for whatever reason, and they quickly resume from that position and start again. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Now, Shaktiman Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. I have a question regarding the verse 9.4, Maya Tatam Idam Sarvam. It is really difficult for me to understand when I read the translation, when Krishna says, by me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I'm not in them. This is where I'm having difficulty to understand what Krishna is saying, because Krishna is in everyone's heart as a Paramatma, right? But here he's saying, but I'm not in them. That's where I'm getting confused. Can you please explain, Prabhu?
So this comes in the category. So these set of verses, they come in the category of the simultaneous oneness and difference. Even though the word unmanifested is used over here, and it's probably a close translation to the Sanskrit, but essentially this is talking about the two forms of Krishna. That is, Paramatma, he's within everyone, and the entire universe is within Mahavishnu. So similar verses are in Isopanishad, the simultaneously Krishna being inside and outside.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, Ram Tulsi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I had a question about 9:10. Krishna, it's very similar. So Krishna says in 9:10 that, I'm just looking at it. The material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction. O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. So this is very similar to when we say not a blade of grass moves without the direction of Sri Krishna. Then if that's the case, what about Duryodhana? Why was he working under the direction of Krishna? And if so, why did Krishna ask Arjuna to fight in that war, fight against Duryodhana?
Thank you. That's a good question. So So when Krishna says samam sabhuteshu name dveshasya na priya, he makes this point that I am the same to everyone, right? So that is Krishna in the Paramatma form. In the Paramatma form, what Krishna is doing is that he's simply working to reciprocate. So he allows the jiva to do based on two criteria: what they deserve and what they desire. So the deserve comes from the previous entitlements because of the pious or impious activities, and the desire comes from the free will of the jiva, right? So Krishna does not interfere. So when Duryodhan wanted to disrobe Draupadi, then yes, the Paramatma was empowering, yeah, but that is his role of being completely neutral. That is Krishna's relationship with non-devotees. But with devotees, he has a different relationship. He put Arjun into illusion, right? You can say, what kind of a friend who puts his friend under illusion? He puts the Pandavas into so much of trouble, and he rescues them. So then the relationship is not bound by any rules. It's like if you're friends with the person, you can't curate that relationship that when I do this, you do this, and when I'm happy, then you should act in this way. It becomes a completely personal relationship. So essentially, that's the difference. That for the whole so beings that are not devotees, Krishna as the Paramatma is overseeing and permitting them. Right, and whether they're doing good or bad activities, he serves the results of the activities through the law of karma. That's how he deals. For devotees, he is doing all kinds of different things. He is in a little bit of a tangent, but in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this point is made in one of the purports that when a person takes to devotion, then the Paramatma is replaced by Krishna. So devotees don't carry Paramatma, they carry Krishna. Now, to some extent, there is some poetic license there because there's no difference between Paramatma and Krishna. But it gives a sense of how Krishna's relationship is different between devotees and everybody else. Does that help, Mataji?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji. Okay, so I noticed Praveen had, so Praveen Prabhu, I think I also owe you an answer. You had asked me the question about in chapter 8, right? You had asked me the question. And I did a little bit of research on that. So the question that you had asked was that if we say auspicious time of the day and light, and then Brahma Muhurat is actually, at least in winter, it's very dark at the time. How do we reconcile that? So it's a little. So I'll take out the purport. Prabhupada actually explains that in the purport of 824, Prabhupada says that when fire, light, day, and fortnight of the moon are mentioned, it is to be understood that over all of them are various presiding deities who make arrangements for the passage of the soul. So the point that Prabhupada is making is that when these aspects are mentioned, they're actually pointing to the deities that preside on these aspects. And this is actually confirmed, obviously, by Prabhupada speaks according to the Parampara. So I looked at the explanation by Baldev Vibhushan, and what he says is that in the, this is that verse 824, the word Kal, which is considered to be referring to time, he says it cannot be considered to be referred to time because Agni, Jyoti, and Dhuma, so fire, light, and smoke, they have no relationship to time. So then he explains it in the same way Prabhupada is explaining. So essentially what Krishna is saying, that when one dies with a favorable consciousness, then the deities who are presiding on the deity of fire, the deity of light, the deity of day, the deity of Shukla, the deity of the Uttarayan. Actually, Baldev Vidyabhushan says that Krishna is giving us a representative. He says there are actually 12 deities. And then he quotes from Chandogya Upanishad. He gives the name of the 12 deities. So when a person dies with proper consciousness, then these 12 deities, they take the subtle body from one to another, and they hand it over till it goes to the Brahman. When person dies with a material consciousness, then there are 7 deities that take the soul and send it to the moon planet, right? So that's a more technical explanation of the question. Is that okay? Is that satisfying?
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay. Did you have any question on the 9th chapter?
Yes, probably. So, like, is there any difference between when Prabhupada uses demoniac and atheistic? Like, what are the difference between these two words? And also, like, when Krishna kills a demon, they are liberated normally, and that means they go to the Brahman effulgence. Is there a reason why they are awarded that like Brahman is their free will not being denied in that case? Like, do they really want to go to Brahman? Like when Krishna kills somebody, do they really want to go to Brahman? Like that is a question. And also, like, if somebody is more in a goodness, right? There is some people in mode of goodness, and there is a demon who is in mode of ignorance, but he is atheist. And is still against Krishna, and why is that person getting more award than somebody who is in the mode of goodness?
Okay, valid question. So demon and atheist, it depends on the context that is being used. In the 7th chapter, Srila Prabhupada makes the difference. So he makes this point that the Naradhamas, who are the lowest, I'm speaking from memory now, the Naradhamas who are the lowest of mankind, they are the ones who are atheistic, right? And let me check on that and get back to you. I don't want to speak something incorrect. But Prabhupada makes this distinction. So when he talks about the 4 kinds of people who reject Krishna, then there are one who are okay, I'll get back to you.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah. The other question that you asked, why do those who are killed by Krishna go to Brahman? So firstly, it's difficult getting killed by Krishna, right? Very few people can get killed by Krishna. So even though they are demons and whatever they are, but for one to get qualified that Krishna personally comes and kills, that's a big thing. So they're obviously exalted beings, regardless of whatever the present condition is. Secondly, when Krishna is there, there really are no rules per se. So we do say that people killed by Krishna go to Brahman, but in the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam, Uddhav makes this point that those who were killed by Krishna actually went to the planet of Krishna. They don't go to Brahman. They actually get Salukya, Mukti. Prabhupada explains that, Vishnu Chakravarti explains actually that because of the presence of Arjun, because Arjun was killing them, and Krishna is favorable to his devotee, but because of the presence of Krishna. So generally speaking, it is so that they go to Brahman. their qualification of entering into Brahman is essentially the same as the qualification of being in a position where they're killed by Krishna. So because of whatever activities, they have basically come to the point where Krishna personally wants to kill them. Right? So that qualifies them to go to Brahman. And others were more, there are people who are pious, they go to heavenly planets. They don't have anything to do with Krishna, so they go into various material destinations. I remembered once when there was a class and the sannyasi was talking about the appearance of Kalki. And towards the end of Kali Yuga, Kalki will come, and then it said that he will basically kill almost everybody other than devotees. And the person was saying that, that's not a bad deal. Just hang around till that time, get killed by Kalki, and go back to Godhead. So the point that was made was that when there is Krishna, there are no rules. Krishna can kill somebody and send the person back to the lowest planetary system, right? Or he could send them to his own, like he killed Putna and he sent her to Vaikuntha. So it's all Krishna's will, Krishna's desire. Okay, that helps, Prabhu?
Prabhuji, yeah, a follow-up question here, but is Krishna honoring the free will of that particular jiva in that situation? That because if that jiva does, like somebody wants to, when somebody does good stuff or like in the mode of goodness, they want to elevate themselves, like Krishna says, like people worshipping demigod go to demigod, worshipping ghosts go to the ghosts, doing good welfare, they come back to earth or do welfare. But somebody doesn't want to go to the Brahman. Is Krishna just saying, okay, you will come to Brahman or you will come to Goloka? So is Krishna denying their free will in those situations?
So free will, you should understand, free will translate to desires. It does not translate to fulfillment of desires, right? Because if Krishna was honoring everybody's free will, all of us would be Krishnas, right? That's what, at least in the material world, right? We all came down wanting to be Krishna. So free will does not translate to fulfillment of will, but based on what the person is qualified. So I may go out and want to buy something that is worth $10. I have money to cover that, so I can buy $10, right? So I have a desire, I'm qualified, I buy it. I want to buy something for $1 million, so I may have the desires, but I can't. Krishna is not going to fulfill that desire, right? Because I don't have the qualification to do it, right?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so we have 3 more questions, and after that we will go with the presentation. So Rajiv Sham Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhu, Dandot Pranam. Actually, your last question raised another question. So if that is the case, is it guaranteed for us that we'll go back to Krishna Loka? Because if you're saying that it's up to our qualifications too, right? So when we are doing bhakti in this life, if we are not qualified, who knows we are qualified? Who knows I am qualified to go back to Godhead. So is there a chance that you go to a different situation, not back to Godhead? Because of the qualification aspect that you mentioned in your last answer.
That is correct, Prabhu. So whether we go back to Godhead at the end of this life or at the end of the next life or 10 million lives, it's completely upon us how well we execute our bhakti. Our going back to Godhead is, you can sometimes analogies explain it to some extent, not completely, but think of it this way, that you're going to meet a friend and the friend lives some distance away. So from your house, you drive, walk, swim, different ways that you go, and then you reach the door of the person's house, and then you ring the bell. And then the person opens the door and lets you in, right? If the person does not open the door, he won't let you in. So, but at least you have to be at the door. So that's your effort. So you have to be at the door, but you can never force yourself back to Godhead. You can never say that now I'm qualified to go back to Godhead. Now I've chanted 16 rounds nicely for the past so many years, so I'm qualified to go back to Godhead. One can only go back to Godhead by invitation. What we do is we become qualified to ring that bell. Right?
And one other question, that was the original question for me. Like when we refer to devotional service is it always related to Krishna? Like demigods, like people who worship demigods, where they are they doing devotional service, or is it something else?
I guess there are two parts to your question. Is devotional service always related to Krishna? Yes. So in Nectar Devotion, which we will do after Bhagavad Gita, Rupa Goswami defines devotional service as it needs to be directed only at Krishna in a favorable mood. These are the two essential characteristics. Any one of this is missing, it's not bhakti. It's something else. Yeah? The famous Vagana Bilashita Shuddhamadi. So it's Anukulena Krishnanu, Anushilana, Bhakti Uttama. Demigods, they're obviously devotees because they have an exalted position. Again, they are also jivas, they have free will. They could be doing Shuddha Bhakti or Mishra Bhakti. Generally, it is understood that they are doing Karma Mishra Bhakti because people who take on to that positions get that position through piety. They are through the performance of Karma Kanda. That's how they get that position. So they carry that conceptions along.
Thank you.
Okay. So there's a Prabhu with initials JGD.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. My name is Jai Govind Das. Sorry about that. Prabhu, you probably covered some part of it, but my question was on 929, the Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu. And it's like, this almost seems like, all men are equal, but some are more equal than others. So I guess you answered it somewhat, but how do we make the case that it's not like that? It's not like all men are equal, but some are more equal than others.
So if you frame the verse in a slightly different context, that all men are equal, but my devotees are special, then there's no ambiguity about it. The first two lines of the verse, they talk about those who are not devotees. Samam sarvbhuteshu namedveshi. That's Krishna in the Paramatma form. The last two lines, they talk about that my tuteshu chapyam, that my devotees live in me and I live in them, right? Now, why does Krishna, so Krishna, of course, has his own free will. That is Krishna's discretion. He wants to be partial to his devotees. So he's stating the principle clearly. But that is Krishna's prerogative, right? Somebody can say that you should be impartial to the devotees also. Krishna says, no, I'm partial to the devotees. In fact, I'm very partial to the devotees. Even if they are doing the most sinful activities, then you should consider them to be devotees. So that is Krishna's prerogative. We can understand that from that.
Because, in the translation also, it says that I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all. And yet, for devotees, it's like, it's a different standard almost. This is only for non-devotees. I'm equal, but for devotees, that doesn't apply. Is that a good way to understand that?
That is correct. I'm impartial for everybody else, but partial to my devotees.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you.
So generally, you appear to be a little sad to hear that. Generally, devotees get happy when they hear this verse because it speaks about Krishna's partiality to them.
Right, but what happens is when we have to explain it, or with people who are not devotees, we basically are in a college town, and we have, we conduct college events. So we get a lot of people, who are completely new and all. So it's sort of difficult to explain to them.
So Prabhupada gives an analogy that there is a king, and the king he's ruling a country. So for all the citizens, he is the king, and he's ruling them based on the laws of the kingdom. For his own family, he is different. He's a father or a husband or a son. Nobody would expect the king to treat his family the same as the citizens. That would be unnatural, right? So Krishna considers the devotees as what does he say? Vasudeva Kutumba. Right? He says the devotees are my family. Right. So we see that principle applied everywhere, and we accept it. Why not accept it for Krishna? And it is an incentive to get on the good side of Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. So I'll take one more question. Praveen Prabhu, maybe later on for you. I just want to make sure we have time for the presentations. So Ajit Krishna Prabhu, please go ahead.
So Prabhuji, just a very quick question. This is following up on the answer that you were giving to Ramatulsi Mataji regarding Krishna enters into the heart of the devotee and replaces the Paramatma. I was just wondering, at what stage does that happen, and is that only for the Lord's pure associates like the Pandavas, or is that, or somebody like Srila Prabhupada, of course, but or is that a stage that an aspiring devotee can attain to as well?
It's a good question, Prabhu, and it essentially boils down to the question that at what stage does one become a devotee of Krishna, right? And sometimes it is said that anyone who chants Krishna's name even once is considered to be a devotee. Other points it is said that one who has exclusive devotion to Krishna is considered to be a devotee. Most of us as sadhakas are somewhere in between. There's no clear understanding of the answer to that question, and it's a question that gets asked all the time. We all want to know, where are we in this scale? Rampur Maharaj once gave this answer that it doesn't really matter. The famous example Srila Prabhupada gives of the green mango and the ripe mango. Like, once you it's still a mango, whether it is green or ripe is just a matter of time. So whether you're practicing or perfected, you're still a devotee, just a matter of time. That assurance Prabhupada gives us, that once you take to the process of bhakti, the ending is inevitably back to Krishna. How long it takes for you to get there, that's up to you. But Krishna will through the medium of his devotees and instructions, will eventually get you back to Godhead. So that assurance is there, and the fact that you will get a human form of birth again. I mean, should not be a license for us to perform sinful activities, but
right.
That assurance is given that one who takes to Krishna consciousness will, at the minimum, neha vikramana sastri tattva yuna, right? But at the minimum, get a human form of life.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prabhu, if I may, just following up on that answer. So essentially, are we to understand that, once we are following this, our struggle is basically only to get back to Krishna ASAP. Eventually we will, but the struggle basically essentially is only to get there quickly instead of taking the long scenic route. Is that how we can understand this then?
Yes, that is there. Bhakti Siddhanta actually makes the same point. He says that it's not a scenic route; it's a dangerous route. So, he said? This material world is no place for a gentleman. So once you come down to this world, and somehow or else are fortunate to take to Krishna consciousness, make this your last birth. And in the initial days of ISKCON, Probably Ram Tulsi Mataji remembers this much more than I do. I wasn't there. That there was this sense of urgency that Srila Prabhupada instilled in his disciples, that you have to go back to Godhead in this lifetime. You have to perfect your devotional service in this lifetime. Now there is more complacency. People have read more scriptures. They've got more understanding that, as you're saying, that there's a scenic route that leads ultimately to Krishna. But it's also a dangerous route. I mean, what if you get birth in a opulent family and then get consumed by the attraction to the opulences, right? Another 100,000 births are lost down that route. So why take that risk?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. So let's see, we have 10 minutes left, and we probably will not be able to go through the Chaturshloki. So maybe what we can do is we can have 2 of the groups present, and then we will do the other 2 groups next week. And then after that, I'll summarize the 10th chapter, and we'll get ready for the 11th chapter. So if group 1 is ready, and if the spokesman can talk about 10.8.
Hare Krishna. So I'm representing group 1. So in the first verse of the Chaturshloki 10.8, Krishna says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engaged in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So the way we see it is that there are like 3 parts to this statement here. So one is the identity of Krishna, who the second portion is basically who is trying or who wants to understand the Krishna's identity and how they will get to know that true identity and what transformation happens once you know the identity of Krishna. So the first thing, basically, Krishna says that he is the source of all that's in this world. So whether it's material or spiritual, everything, absolutely everything emanates from him. So in Prabhupada's lectures, actually, he gives examples of like loving your father. So if you love the father, you're going to love all the siblings. On the same lines, let's say if you go somewhere and you're actually finding people from your area, maybe from India or wherever you are from, no matter where you meet them, you're always asking, and you always have that extra special attraction towards them, asking them how they are doing and things like that. Maybe if you're seeing in them in their native language, you maybe even talk in the native language. So, but the whole point is that attraction to the source. So once you are attracted to that source, you are always attracted to anything that is related to the source. The other example Prabhupada gives is basically watering the root of a tree. So when we water any plant, if we water the leaves or water the stems or branches, that's not the way to do, right? We always water the root. And once you are watering the root, everything else on the tree gets nourishment. So, so in that kind of verse, in this verse, Prabhupada goes into a lot of details behind, like a lot of Shastric evidences of who Krishna is. Then we also talked about who wants to understand Krishna. So basically people who read Shastras and understand the references in them, they are the ones who truly identify who Lord Krishna is. And basically, and how they can attain that knowledge is basically they submissively learn this from a bona fide spiritual master, and then they become truly learned men. And the last thing is the transformation. So once you happen to know the true identity of Krishna, you engage all your energy in Krishna consciousness. You become enlightened and wholeheartedly devote to him. And that indicates that the knowledge of God is not meant to be for theoretical or just informational purposes. It's meant to be transformational. And this kind of helps transform yourself from whatever state you are into more trying to become a devotee. Thank you.
Very good, Prabhu. Good job. I think the group did an excellent job summarizing it. Can we move on to group 2?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam, Jai Shila Prabhupada, Bokila. I'm going to summarize the 10.9 section. Earlier verse 10.8 was the Sambandha part, and 10.9 is the Abhidya part. So here, the pure devotees dedicate their life and engage themselves fully in transcendental loving service of the Lord. Their mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. Each moment they spend glorifying the qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Their heart and soul submerged with thoughts of Krishna. They take pleasure in discussing Krishna with other devotees. They take great delight in enlightening each other. Conversing about Krishna is a natural expression of devotion. So devotees' body, mind, and words are completely absorbed in devotional service, and they experience spiritual bliss. This is beyond the mode of material nature. In order to transcend the modes, one has to constantly discuss about Krishna. When Krishna is glorified, we are purified. So the devotees, Srila Prabhupada says, the devotees are always dedicated completely in devotional service, and they get great pleasure in discussing about Krishna all the time. So there are two stages of devotional service. The preliminary stage, they relish transcendental pleasure in service itself. And in the mature stage, they are always situated in love of God and thus relish the highest perfection, which is exhibited by the Lord in his abode. So the analogy part is the Bhakti Lata Beach in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu compares the transcendental devotional service to sowing of a seed in the heart of a living entity. It keeps growing, surpasses this material covering and goes to Brahma Jyoti, and then keeps growing until it reaches the Krishna's abode. And it will start bearing fruits as long as the watering process of chanting the holy names continues. When one attains the love of Godhead, then one cannot live even a moment without being in contact with the Supreme. So the analogy is like, just like the fish cannot live without water, the devotees cannot live without in contact with Supreme. So the last section, Srila Prabhupada talks about Srimad Bhagavatam, how it is so nectarian. It talks about the relationship between the Lord and his devotees, and it's very transcendental. It is free from dharma, artha, karma, moksha. Therefore, it is very dear to the devotees, and the realized souls take immense pleasure in hearing such transcendental literatures. And the analogy given here is just like a young boy and girl takes pleasure in their association, like they are inseparable. They always want to talk to each other like that. Same way, the devotee also feels the same. That is my summarization, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much. So we have the first two verses done. We will start with the group 3 next week and do the next two verses, and after that we'll do a summation of the chapter. And time permitting, we'll start with the 11th chapter. Okay, so we'll end here. Vanchakalpata rubya namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bhayahari. Jai
Krishna
Krishna. Gauranga. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Prabhuji.